Welcome to Writers and Books Tuesdays with BOA. My name is Dan Hurd. I'm the Director of Adult Programs at Writers and Books. Writers and Books is a nonprofit literary arts center in Rochester, New York. We offer readings, workshops, and literary programming for people of all ages, all currently available online. Our theme for 2021 is Taking Care. We're celebrating the different ways we can take care of ourselves and take care of others this year. You can check out our upcoming schedule at wab.org. Please say hello in the chat and let us know you're there. Feel free to submit questions through the Q&A function. Alien Stories is available through our bookstore &Books. I'll put the link in the chat. We're so excited to have E.C. Osondu with us this evening. First, we'll hear from E.C., and then he'll be in conversation with BOA Editions Director of Development and Communications, Genevieve Hartman. E.C. Osondu is the author of Alien Stories, winner of the BOA Short Fiction Prize, Voice of America, and the novel This House is Not for Sale. He is a winner of the Kane Prize for African Writing and the Allen and Norell Galso Prize for Fiction, among other awards. His fiction has appeared in The Atlantic, Agni, N+1, Guernica, Kenyon Review, McSweeney's, and many other places. He lives in North Providence, Rhode Island, and teaches at Providence College. The writer George Saunders has called him a vital voice in the short story, telling us new truths with deep humanity. E.C., thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. All right. Thanks to everyone who made it here. I am so grateful to have you guys join me for my very first reading for Alien Stories. It's a book that not that I don't like all my books, but I'm particularly excited about this one. Thank you, Peter, for all the help with the editing, and thank you to the BOA team for all the great work you did with this. And for everyone who's here tonight, I want to especially thank you for making it here. I would like to read a story from the collection, and it's titled Memory Store. And, I think it's just a story about someone who sells their memories. There is not much to explain. I'll jump right into it, and I hope I can get to read the story in its entirety. So it's titled Memory Store. It says, one of the things he found most fascinating about America were the memory stores that could be found on almost every street corner. A person will simply walk into any of the stores and sell their memories for money. It was that straightforward. He had come to the realization that certain things were undoubtedly straightforward in America than they were back home. Take American beers with their twist-off caps, for instance. Twist-off caps may not seem like a big deal to most American beer drinkers, but he remembered buying a cold bottle of beer when he was back home and bringing it to his room and ransacking the entire room in search of a bottle opener. He eventually found the opener lying underneath a pile of old newspapers. By then, the beer was already lukewarm and tasted flat on his tongue. Even in matters that did not appear so straightforward, he still admired America. He loved the fact that in America, there were a dozen different kinds of donuts. There were even donuts without holes. Back home, he had grown up knowing only one kind of donut, light brown with a hole in the center. He recalled his first time in an American donut store. I want a donut, he said to the sales clerk. Which one of them do you want? She asked. He had pointed vaguely in the direction of the glass display case. The sales clerk looked at him and began pointing out and reading off the names of different kinds of donuts. Glazed, chocolate, vanilla, frosted, powdered, sugar, old-fashioned. Looking at her, he had pointed at a light brown donut with a hole in the middle. Honey, you mean old-fashioned? Why didn't you say so instead of messing with me? She sounded relieved and laughed. The coffee-laden atmosphere had lightened. He too had laughed. He had repeated the words old-fashioned and had vowed to commit it to memory. A memory store? Only in America. He planned to visit one and find out how it worked. He had no immediate plans to sell his memories, but there was no harm in knowing about their operations. He was sure the operators of the memory stores will be as polite and as pleasant as he had found most American storekeepers to be. The first time he went into a memory store, he walked in furtively, like a church deacon walking into a brothel. First, he looked right, then left, then right again, and then he ducked in. As soon as he entered the store, all his apprehensions disappeared. "Hi, buddy, I am R," the guy who managed the store said. He in turn introduced himself by his first initial. Everyone went by their initials these days. It was one of the laws introduced to unite the country after what had happened during the previous regime. He could tell that the man was Hispanic. He could tell from the man's accent. You could not get rid of accents by simple legislation. Did the R stand for Ramirez, Rodriguez? It was inappropriate to ask. Such things did not matter anymore. Everyone was American, and that was all that was important. "It's very easy, my friend," the guy said. He had looked around the store. He had expected to see lots of gadgets, but there were actually just a few. "First, I'll need to wipe down your hands with rubbing alcohol. Then you'll place the 5 fingers of both hands on this glass panel in front of me. Then if you focus your mind and recall the memory you want to sell to us, then you will focus your mind and recall the memory you want to sell to us. Your memory will appear on the screen right here, and I'll tell how much we are able to pay for it. If we agree on the price, then I'll give you a card loaded with the amount for which we bought your memory. You can use the card to make a purchase anywhere. There are stores down the road from here. They sell good stuff. The process is painless," R explained. He told R that he had only come to look around and find out how the thing worked. "Look around, my friend. Take your time. Feel free to ask if you have any questions," R said. He looked around, but there really wasn't much more to see than what R had showed him. It looked like a pretty basic operation. Just then the bell rang announcing the arrival of a customer. R showed him out through another door. He looked forward to his job. He worked with a place called Work Ready. They provided workers for the car auction. They provided both drivers and cleaners. He was one of the cleaners. His job was to wash the cars, wipe them down, and make them look good on the auction block. They thought that a car that he had tidied would be driven by a man who lived in a far-off place, such as one of the Gulf states, thrilled him and made him shine the cars with gusto. His boss had stood watching him one day while he used a clean, dry piece of cloth to shine a car he had just washed. He had looked up and seen his boss watching him. "I have never seen anyone wipe down a car with so much joy," his boss said. "I always do a good job, because you never know where the cars might end up," he said to his boss. "You never know, huh? Good job, keep it up," the boss said. He had thanked his boss. His boss had made to walk away and then had come back and said to him, You know something? There can only be one supervisor here, right? I've been the supervisor for 3 years, and the company has no plans to fire me or promote any person to any position. Still, I like your hustle, man." The short speech had left him confused, but he had only smiled and continued with his cleaning. Later that winter, he had reported at Work Ready one morning and was met by the long faces of his colleagues. Work Ready was letting the cleaners go. They were consolidating. That was the language they used. The drivers could be the ones to the drivers will be the ones to clean the cars from now onwards. It was a way to save money. His supervisor had pulled him aside to the hallway near the bathroom and had asked him if he could drive. He said he couldn't. The supervisor had told him to go to a driving school and come back when he got his driver's license. He sat before the memory machine and began to dredge his mind. He realized how true something he had heard many years ago was. Everything in life becomes difficult when you try to force it. He thought that since his mind often wandered into the past, recalling stuff would be easy. His mind was going blank at the moment. "Some people find that when they close their eyes, it helps," R said to him. He closed his eyes and hoped he would not nod off and start snoring loudly. Why was he worrying about everything all of a sudden? His mind became clear. The fog lifted. He was a little boy of 7 running home from school. He could still smell the aroma of jollof rice and fried goat meat. At the completion of the school year, they were served jollof rice and fried goat meat by the school. He didn't wait for the jollof rice or the fried goat meat. He snatched his report card as soon as they announced that he was first in his class and began to run home to his grandmother. She was outside bathing in the sun. She was wearing her green sweater, the one with the Christmas decorations. His grandmother didn't know that the design on her sweater were Christmas decorations. He wouldn't know either until he came to America. He would also learn in America that they were called ugly sweaters. He never did understand why. They were beautiful and colorful to him. He handed the report card to his grandmother. "Tell me what it says, my son." "Open it, Grandma. Look at it yourself," he said to her. "You open it and read to me. That's why I sent you to school," she said. He opened the report card and told her that he came first in his class and that he had scored 100% in all the subjects and that he had not stayed back to eat the jollof rice and goat meat that was cooked for all the students for the end of the academic year. "Will their jollof rice taste as good as the one I'm going to make for you?" his grandmother asked. "Never," he said. R was tapping him on the shoulder. He was almost too far gone, so carried away by the memory he had forgotten where he was and had been transported entirely into the world of his childhood with his grandmother. That is all we need for today's session. You did really great. These types are quite rare. They've got everything we're looking for in a memory. Genuine, not artificial, and filled with joy. Now follow me and I'll give you your payment. It is a card. It is loaded and you can use it at designated stores to buy really good stuff, Al said. He was still feeling a little unfocused from the experience. For some reason, he was also feeling lighter, but not in a heavy, load taken away kind of way. It was like he had misplaced something. Perhaps an object he had in his pocket had been lost. He collected the payment card. He was surprised at the amount they were paying him. "Thank you," he said to R. "No, thank you," R said. He hesitated to leave. Something was still bothering him. It had all seemed so easy. "So what is going to happen to the one I just gave you?" he asked R. "Oh, don't worry. We're going to put it to good use. Like I told you, it's a great one. Very much in high demand, authentic and genuine. They are going to love it." "Ah," he said. "You know, some people come here and they try to sell us fake memories or pass off other people's memories as their own. But the machine has a system for detecting those kinds real quick," R said. "The one I just gave you, what about it?" he asked. "Oh, I see what you mean. It's gone. You will never recall that particular memory again. It's like it never existed, wiped out, gone. It no longer belongs to you. But don't worry about it. I'm sure there are lots where that came from, buddy," R said. R sounded jokey, but a little furtive in his manner. He could tell that R wanted him to leave. He took his card and walked to the store that sold household goods. He had always wanted a huge television. He wanted a giant one that would dominate the environment of his sitting room. The lives of American families did not revolve around television the way lives did back home. Back home, the television had come to replace the grandmother around whom everyone sat after the evening meal, listening as she told folk tales. Over here, the television was overlooked, just like an American grandmother. The television talked to itself for the most part and went largely ignored when they spoke to other occupants of the house. Life here rather revolved around the fridge, the opening of the fridge and the slamming of the fridge door, and the perpetual complaint of "there is nothing to eat. There's never anything to eat here," though the fridge will usually be bursting from the seams with all kinds of food and drinks. He bought the giant television. It was 64 inches. They took it home for him. He rode with the delivery guys and watched them install it. He sat in front of the television and began flipping channels. He flipped and flipped again, his right hand and thumb feeling heavy, yet there still remained channels to flip. He recalled that back home, the television came on at 4 p.m. That was when the stations opened. The stations closed at 11 p.m. There was hardly more than an hour of movies and drama. The rest of the time was devoted to men and women in elaborate costume-like clothes, using big words to argue between themselves about how to move the country forward. He stumbled on a soccer game and stopped. There was no commentary. It had been originally in Spanish, but had been edited to remove the Spanish commentary. They had not bothered to do the work of substituting an English language commentary. He began to watch the game without commentary by following the colors of the jerseys of the players. His eyes soon grew weary and he fell asleep and began to snore. The television was still on, and soon the television began to watch him sleep. It was one of the modern types of televisions. When it sensed no movement in the sitting room, it shut itself down. When he woke up, he was sitting in the dark, alone without the television glow. But he was not afraid of the darkness here in America. He found American darkness to be somewhat more gray than dark. Back home, he would stretch out his hand while walking in the dark, and even his hand disappeared and became one with the inky darkness. He went to work ready to ask if there were job openings. The lady there told him that they were giving priority to people who were mandated to work by a judge so that they could pay their child support. We're focused on placing those who have to pay their child support right now. Others will just have to wait, she said. He had asked after the supervisor, who had asked that he get in touch as soon as he could drive, and was told that the supervisor had resigned. So if he had paid to go to a driving school as the guy had suggested, it would have been for nothing. He told the lady he would look in some other time. She said, sure thing, that he should keep checking in with them from time to time. He decided to go to the memory store once again. He went through the routine, wiped his hand down. He walked on coming up with a memory. It was easier this time around. The memory came. He had gone to play soccer with a brand new Wembley soccer ball that his grandmother had bought for him. He had enjoyed the pleasure of picking those who were going to play on his side as the owner of the soccer ball. The game had been fun all the way, with both sides scoring 2 goals each. Then when they were taking a break preparatory to changing sides, one of the big boys who had been watching the game from his sides, his name was Monday, asked to join the game. He said no. Monday seized the soccer ball, saying that if they will not let him play, then he will not play either, that they will not play either, that the ball will not be given back. He had tried to get his ball back, but had received a swift kick on the shin from Monday. He had run home crying to his grandmother. His grandmother sent him back to get his ball, telling him not to come home without it. R was tapping him on the shoulder. This one is no good. We cannot pay for this, R said. Why? What is wrong with it? He asked. Nothing is wrong with it. It's just that we don't find this type useful. People are not interested in this. It is somewhat generic, if you know what I mean. Someone gets his ball stolen by a bully and he fights to get it back. Think of something else. Go to that room over there, get a cup of coffee or ginger ale. Try and relax for a few minutes. I'm sure something useful will come to you, he said. He went into the room and poured himself some ginger ale and added ice. He felt like someone who had failed his exams. What could be so hard about coming up with some good memories? But why did the store not have a list of memory items that they accepted and those that they didn't? He sipped the ginger ale and told himself to calm down. He had not liked ginger ale as a kid. He thought it tasted too much like an adult drink. It was not sugary enough, not like other kinds of soft drinks. As an adult in America, it had become his favorite drink. He liked the austere taste. His mind became clear, and he remembered the day before he left for America. Yes, that should be a good memory. He left his half-drunk cup of ginger ale on the table and went to meet R. I see you're ready to try again, my friend. Let's do it, R said. He remembered his last day before he traveled to America. The house was filled with more people than it was accustomed to. There was food and lots of it. People were eating and drinking and talking. In the background, music was playing aloud. He was not quite sure who the musician was. For some reason, though, he remembered the title of the song. It was titled Ace. His grandmother had refused to eat anything and was crying. He told her to stop crying, that today was a happy day. She held onto his hand and repeated the words he had just said to her. She had paused and then resumed with crying. I'm not living forever. I'm going to come back soon. And when I come back, I'll build you a bigger house, he said to his grandmother. She had stopped crying to listen to him. Not even your grandmother knows the secret of living forever, she said, and continued to cry. He decided to change tack since this approach was not working. I don't want to remember you like this. I don't want my last memory to be of you weeping, he said. This seemed to have touched her, and she had wiped her face with her headscarf and asked for some food and drink. Perfect. See, I told you to take a break. You'll come up with something we can use. It worked. This is a good one. Here, take your card. You did a good job, I said to him. He bought a fridge with the card. It was a gray fridge with double doors. It had a different compartment for every item. He had always thought that every fridge must come in a white color, but had been thrilled by the fact that they now came in all kinds of colors. He had told the guys who delivered the new fridge to take away the old one, but they refused. They said it was against company regulations. He had told them that they could take it for free and sell it for money since it was still working and in good shape, but they had said no. So the old fridge sat mutely beside the new one like an unwanted guest. It was the 26th of December. It was the anniversary of the passing of his grandmother. He thought that even in her choice of the day of her death, his grandmother had been her good old considerate self. The day after Christmas was hard to forget. He sat before his television. He had turned it off. The fridge was humming distinctly. He wanted to spend some time thinking of his grandmother and honoring her memory. He sat still and tried to picture her gentle smiling face. He drew a blank. He panicked a little, but he recalled what had happened at the memory store. He opened the fridge and poured himself some ginger ale into a cup and added ice. He sat down and took a sip. He thought hard. His grandmother's face did not come up. There was nothing. Thank you.
Thanks so much for reading, EC. That's
I hope I didn't read for too long.
no, that was perfect.
To read the entire story and let the audience get a flavor of the book.
Yeah, and that's honestly one of my favorites from the collection. So I'm excited that you chose that one.
Thank you.
I guess I wanted to just start with telling everyone that if you have a question that you'd like to give to EC, feel free to use the Q&A function. You can go ahead and type in your question and I will then ask it. But moving from there, so this collection is not like anything else that I've ever read before. And you have these stories that are similar to Memory Store, about being in America and kind of an immigration story, but you also have those right alongside stories that are about extraterrestrial aliens, coming down to Earth.
Yeah.
So what made you decide to put these two seemingly unrelated things together?
Yeah, seemingly unrelated, but actually related. The word alien is something that I'm fascinated with. The idea of alien nation. Alien nation is also something that I'm fascinated with. And then the idea of the philosophical expression, alienation. These are all interesting terms. But for someone who came to this country from Nigeria years ago, I find that sometimes America could also be like outer space. Some of the cultural differences I've kind of played around with in the story that I read. Something that you don't think about when you live here for so long, like the idea of having 12 or 13 or 15 or more different kinds of donuts. I bet you haven't ever given that a thought as something that someone might find confounding or confusing. Okay, so that is something that I thought, oh, well, you take it for granted, but that's a huge cultural shock to someone. It's that simple. Or even the idea of a screw-off cap in a bottle of beer. I bet if you're a beer drinker, you never think of that. But think about the fact that that might be something that is strange to someone who has never seen it. Okay, so in that sense, yes, America might seem like an alien nation. Also, someone who comes from a different place might also be treated in a way that makes them feel like they are from a different planet entirely. Okay, fascination, ignorance, rudeness, racism, all these are things that might make you feel that you're from a different planet entirely. I say, what's the difference between ET and EC? Sometimes ET is more welcomed than EC in certain spaces. So that's it. So I began to play around with of course, I began writing the terrestrial stories first. The stories that are set here that has the word alien as a foreigner. And then it also began to occur to me that, what about real aliens? What about real aliens? How does it feel to be a real alien in also a place that does not belong to you? So that's how those stories began to kind of come together.
Yeah, I find it interesting that in a lot of your stories that are about like extraterrestrial aliens, that the aliens themselves like kind of reflect the stereotypes of what we think aliens like little green men. Is that intentional?
Well, in a way, the thing that one of the things that actually propelled me to write some of those stories was an expression that I had. I think it was in grad school at Syracuse, where someone used the expression "the disruption of the existing order." That when the existing order is disrupted, then a story happens. And then I was talking about this earlier this evening for some uncanny reason. The stories of Gabriel Garcia Marquez, in the collection called Leafstorm, where something like there is disruption of existing order. The body washes up, and they begin to attribute different things to the body. So I've always thought of stories as being, what would happen? What if the way a car breaks down somewhere, an alien spaceship breaks down somewhere? What is going to happen? What's going to be our reaction? And we have certain tropes about aliens. We come in peace, little green men, they walk this way, they walk that way. And I just wanted to critique that idea, because are we sure that that's the way they are? What do we look like in their eyes? Do they even see us as weird and strange and strangely shaped? But those were some of the things, of course, from media images that I grew up with, and I wanted to also play around with those in the stories.
Yeah, I feel like it works together so well. Like you're critiquing this like sense of, well, aliens might not be little green men, while you're also critiquing the sense of that a lot of Americans are looking at people who are not American as kind of like a monolith when that's not the case at all. So
That's
I liked that interplay a lot.
Yeah, that's very true. You know, there are many blogs that say that. I think one of the blogs used to be called "Africa is not a country." That's because that's a perception that Africa is a country. Whereas as someone from Africa, I've never been to Algeria. Algeria is part of Africa, and to think that we are the same, we might share a few things, but we are not the same. Even, I give the example of Nigeria, which is a country that has over 250 million people, that has over 250 languages, and so to even think that everyone from Nigeria is the same, no, that's not true. So I wanted to kind of highlight those differences and make us look closer, and see the individual rather than this monolith.
Yeah, I love that. Something that I was thinking of while I was kind of looking through the stories today is a few of the pieces in here kind of remind me of The Lottery by Shirley Jackson.
That's
And
interesting.
I was just like wondering if that was kind of in the back of your mind at all
That's
while
interesting.
you were writing some of these.
That's interesting. I know that story. I mean, I've read it. I've thought the story. It's a very interesting story because, of course, one of the things I find really fascinating about the story is the sociocultural context. Okay, so when it was first published in the New Yorker. There were two reactions. One of the reactions was, where does this actually take place? We want to know. Some people, it's set in New England, and some people actually believe that it was based on true life events. The other reaction was extreme. Some people said, this story is maligns the American people. This story, we are going to cancel our subscription to the New Yorker because we are not like this. We don't stone people to death. Okay, but of course, when Shirley Jackson wrote that story, she was cautioning about the dangers of conformity. It just seems to her that everyone was becoming a suburbanite and driving the same kind of car and wearing the same kind of clothes. You know, so it's little wonder it has stood the test of time. People still read it. Little wonder it's one of the most imitated stories. You know, one of the most influential stories. It influenced the Hunger Games and a lot of other stories. Yes, so I've read it. I find it very interesting. But what I take away from it, of course, is that above everything else is a cautionary tale. And we do need cautionary tales in the times that we live in right now.
Yeah. Let me see what other questions I wanted to ask. So I myself am a poetry writer, and I'm curious what in particular draws you to the short fiction form as opposed to like a longer form. What made you decide that Alien Stories was going to be short stories?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, look at the book. It's 18 stories. You're never going to be able to do that in a novel. You can't really do a novel where so the with the short story you can do all kinds of dances. You can do the moonwalk, you can do the salsa, you can do the tango, you can do the I don't know what the dances are now. As you can see, my cultural reference is very dated. Okay, the moonwalk is from like the 80s. I think that was Michael Jackson. Okay, but I don't know what the dances are called now. But you know, with a short story, you're allowed to wear all kinds of shoes and all kinds of hats. You can do all kinds of dances. You know, it's really like it's like more like a fiesta. It's more like a buffet. You know, but with a short story, it's one great meal. You know, but you just keep at it. So the short story is very attractive for that. You know, I think that all the themes and all the ideas and all the critiques that I'm able to do with the short story, I'm probably not going to be able to do so much and speak to so much as I am able to with the short story, you know. But I like poetry. I read poetry. Where is my book? The book I'm reading right now. Okay, I just removed it here. The collected stories of, I think, the Zimboka. I hope that's how her name is spelled. I find poetry to be very inspiring. Like I said, with the Poets and Writers interview, I find it to be a palate cleanser. I don't think anybody who writes fiction should read poetry, you know, especially for language, you know. But of course, I've written a novel. I've published This House Is Not for Sale. I've also written another one unpublished. I like the novel. I read it. But the short story is interesting too for all the things that it can do. And you know, I tell people the short story is not a practice for it's not a practice for the novel.
Yeah, I think a short story is almost harder. So you have so much less time to tell your story.
And it has to work.
Yeah.
It has to
And
work. You know, a novel, you can actually afford to have downtime of 20 pages in a novel and you can skip it and you can still enjoy the novel. Yeah, with a short story, there's not much room to move.
yeah. You already touched on my last question that I had was what you're currently reading or what you're excited to read next.
Yeah, I'm reading the poetry collection, and I'm also reading a book of essays, selected essays. It's called otherwise known as The Human Condition by an essayist called Geoff Dyer. You know, I like humor a lot in writing. I like when people write, especially some of us who deal with subjects that are considered grim sometimes. It's always good to live in it with humor. So I like writing that actually makes me laugh or makes me laugh at the human condition. So um, I read, and when I'm writing fiction, I like to move away as much as possible from reading fiction. You know, so I'm reading poetry, I'm reading nonfiction, but certainly not fiction at this time.
Wonderful. Well, we're already running out of time here, and I did
Already?
want to give you an opportunity to read a little bit of an excerpt I think you have for us. Um, so I'll hand the floor back over to you. It's been absolutely wonderful to chat with you, and I do hope that everyone out there will get a chance to read Alien Stories. It's a wonderful collection, and I know we're really proud to publish it. So I'll turn it back over to you, EC. Thanks again
Yeah.
for the wonderful conversation.
Okay. Are we going to take questions later from?
Let me see here.
Yeah.
Oh, we do have, sorry, I was not paying close attention to this. We have a question about
questions on the Q&A.
Yeah, would you like to, do you see them as well? Would you like to answer these questions?
Let me see if I can. Okay, so this is random. Yeah, totally random. Totally random. You see, that's those are my. I like the initials. I like the initials. One of the, you know, things I've always liked are writers who use initials, especially female writers, who use initials as a way of kind of hiding their identity, as a way of trying to mask who they were. So I go by EC. But for some reason, someone who really dug and dug and dug uh, outed me on Wikipedia and put my name in full there. So if you go on Wikipedia, you probably will you'll find it. Okay. Oh, so okay. Oh, okay. You're from Nigeria. So the first name is Epaphras. Okay, that's the first name. Jump on Wikipedia, you'll see the second one. So this person says, what are your thoughts about flash fiction and lyrical essays? I love flash fiction. I love flash fiction. I think that, flash fiction is really the closest thing to poetry. It's really you can be a poet, you can be a fiction writer and not able to write poetry at all. But the thing that helps you to approach to come to like a middle ground is flash fiction. And I like the succinctness because I write short fiction. I like the succinctness of flash fiction. I love to read it. I have tried my hands at writing it. It's something that I'm probably going to do more of. So yes, it's fun. The lyric essay, I can't say that I've written it, but I like to read. I like to read those as well. Yeah. Okay, so how many minutes do I have to?
I think we finish up at 8:15, so you've got about 7 minutes of an excerpt to read. Okay. Thank you again, PC.
Okay, so I'm going to read from a story called The Visitors. I'll just read briefly from it. It's also, but it's closer to. So it says, so my wife, in her typical do-good fashion, has volunteered to host this new alien family that moved to my little village. People have been talking about them ever since they moved into our village. Almost every person who lives here was born here and will never leave. There is nothing special about our village, though we love it. We still wonder why anyone will move here. Like I said, people ask questions about them. Why did they decide to move here? Not that there is anything wrong with our village, but if I were an alien looking for a place to move to, this wouldn't be my first choice. Don't get me wrong, there is nothing the matter with our village in my humble opinion. They should have moved to a big city. It is quite easy to hide in a big city. Not that I think that they have any reason to hide, but you never know. There are not many of us here, and it is quite easy to stick out. We're all like family here. We know each other, both the good and the bad. As for me, I know more about zombies than I know about these guys and where they're from. Now, ask me to tell you a single thing about these new guys and where they come from. Go ahead, ask me. What do I know about them? I have no answer. I know nothing about them. So back to my wife. She's a good woman, but the problem is that she's too good for her own good sometimes. She does not think that there is any person's problem that should be left to that person to resolve on their own. Trust my wife to rush down to a sick person, offering different pills in plastic containers, offering them medicine. In addition, she will go with a flask of hot water and milk and sugar, asking them to drink and feel warm. My wife once took in a stray cat. Now, this ugly old gray cat had everything wrong with it. It was going blind in one eye. It had a limp. It was mean-spirited and never purred, but sat there with one eye half shut, looking moody and offended. Now this cat, no matter how many times my wife tried to make it stay, will run back into the woods behind our house. My wife will feed it condensed milk and the cat will lap it up. But once my wife turned her face, the cat would run back into the woods and only come back during lunchtime for free food and condensed milk. I nicknamed the old rogue Old Moocher. Can't you see that the cat does not want to stay? Can't you see that the cat is just using you? It likes the free food, but also wants to do what it likes to do with itself, I said. The cat needs to get used to human love once again, my wife said. Whenever it got cold or was drizzling or threatening to rain, Old Moocher would saunter in as if it owned the house. As soon as the weather warmed up, there was nothing you could do to entice it to come into the house. Anyway, one fine day, my wife waited for Old Moocher to show up, but he didn't turn up that day or the day after. That was the last we saw of him. I wish I could say that there wasn't a dry eye in the house. My wife was heartbroken, though. She kept saying that we had failed him. We had failed him indeed, I thought. Most likely he had found better tasting condensed milk somewhere else. So it came as no surprise to me then, when I heard that my wife had invited them to our house. She will host Lucifer himself if she got a chance. I'm not suggesting in any way that the aliens were like Lucifer, but just saying. I decided that we were going to host them. Are you saying I should go hide in the closet while they're here? I asked. You'll do no such thing. You'll be polite and pleasant to them while they're here. You'll do everything to make their visit a good one, she said. I could tell that she meant it. One thing about my wife, she may be soft when it came to cats and aliens, but when it came to dealing with me, she sure knew how to crack that whip. I decided to change my approach when I realized my first tack was not working. Remember your African friends and how nice I was to them? Now she was smiling. Was it my question that was making her smile or the memory of her African friends? I could never be sure with her. You were not nice to them initially, if I recall correctly, she said. How on earth could I have been nice to them? What did I know of Africa and Africans? When she had mentioned that we were going to have visitors from Africa, the first thing that occurred to me was the movie I'd seen about Africa years ago. In the movie, there was this old guy who was very meagerly clothed, following a Coca-Cola bottle to the ends of the earth. The Coke bottle was carelessly thrown out of his chopper and had unsettled the hitherto tranquil life of the man and his family. And the rugged fellow had decided that he would return it to whoever had thrown the bottle of this god into his family. I had watched the movie so many times, and each time I wanted to scream at the old man to chill and go back home, that it was only a soda bottle. What else did I know about Africa? I knew it was the birthplace of Freddie Mercury. I loved Queen. I loved their song, The Great Pretenders. I loved Bohemian Rhapsody. But guess what? These aliens from the African continent had turned out not to be too bad, actually. The African wife immediately followed my wife to the kitchen and began to cut, dice, cook, fry. And soon enough, a beautiful aroma that I didn't know my kitchen was capable of producing began to emerge from there. I'll stop there. Thank you very much for coming. It's really been fun, and I appreciate your presence, and I hope that you buy a copy of the book. Thank you so much. And thank you to BOA, and thank you to Writers and Books, and thank you to Dan Hurt. Thank you to Genevieve, and thank you to Peter Connors, and every other person who showed up tonight. Thank you. Highly appreciated.
Thank you so much, EC. Yeah, I'm going to repeat that. Thank you to everyone at BOA. Buy Alien Stories at Ampersand Books. The link is in the chat. You can catch up with videos of our past readings, including this one, at our website. And I want to say thank you for coming and have a great evening.